buy local, and that near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And down in the footnotes at 5-point type, where I always use sans serif font because it's neutral. I will read that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. We're brought to you by the website for the man who matters. That's Nooganomics.com. And I do wear a bow tie because I am in radio and I want to look nice. Of course, we're live on Facebook at Nooga Radio and have a powerful, amazing signal at on digital at 95.3 HD4. That's 95.3 high definition 4, and also on the main signal that doesn't go anywhere near as far, and that's uber powerful 92.7. Thank you for tuning in Facebook or YouTube. Also on the TuneIn Radio app on your phone, you can have that and just call us up anytime. And if you miss something because you have to duck out of your situation there and come back, you can pick up where you left off on the TuneIn Radio app. Now, we've got a lot to get to today, brought to you by Nooganomics.com. And one thing I want you to make note of is a meeting tonight. And we have an entrepreneur on the phone named Joe Page in Ray County. Joe, what's at the meeting tonight at 6 o'clock at the Dayton County Court Annex?
Well, thank you, David, for having me on. The meeting tonight is the workshop where the commissioners will discuss the resolution, which is on the agenda. They will decide then whether to move it forward to the commission meeting, which is on the 19th.
What resolution are you talking about?
We can generate enough opposition to this where it won't even make the agenda for the meeting. We can kill it right here at this workshop.
Okay. What resolution are you talking about?
It's the resolution that would regulate all conduct and business on private property.
Go on. What does it imply? What does it entail? Why are you concerned about it?
Well, as I've said, it's an overly broad resolution that would cover almost every activity, whether personal or business, on private property. They would have the ability to define, suppress, abate, and prevent anything, even if it is so much as a nuisance to your owner your neighbor, or causes them discomfort. This standard is so low that this resolution and subsequent ordinance could be used to pummel the private property owner.
And this measure is proposed by Commissioner Bill Holland. He's one of 9 members. And as the resolution states, which we've covered, by the way, at Nooganomics.com, it requires a 2/3 vote to pass if it comes to a vote.
Yes, that's correct. Originally, David, this was the topic was brought up by a gentleman who was concerned about their neighbors piling up trash in their yard, causing a health hazard. So the county commissioners, Bill Holland in particular, he decided to bring this resolution to the full commission. Now, the resolution is required in order for the county to pass any laws that would, I guess, pertain to cleaning up trash and garbage and health hazards and such. But again, this ordinance is so all-encompassing and so comprehensive that it's just it's gone overboard. It's over-regulation times 2.
Joe is an entrepreneur. You're a builder in Ray County. You live in Spring City. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And,
yes, sir. I moved up here from the Tampa Bay, Florida area to get away from the things that are actually trying to be done right here. I lived 30 years under this kind of authoritarian one-size-fits-all rule. And that's why I moved to Ray County, because I believe that people in Ray County and the people in East Tennessee in general respect private property, respect freedom and liberty.
Right. And the resolution, just the key language says that the county would have, through its inspectors, the authority to define, prohibit, abate, suppress, prevent, and regulate all acts, practices, conduct, businesses, occupations, callings, trades, it keeps going, uses of property, and all other things whatsoever, and then here's another list, detrimental or liable to be detrimental to, and then another list, the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, Joe, convenience, or welfare of the inhabitants of the municipality, and exercise general police powers. I mean, the fact that there's something that's an inconvenience to me that a neighbor is doing gives the county authority to intervene in that matter.
David, if that list doesn't scare people to death, then there's something wrong. I mean, when you read that, I almost couldn't believe what I was reading when I first read it. There's a mechanism for addressing these kinds of problems, but this is certainly not it. And we have to assert our objection to this and defend our private property rights.
And the thing you're concerned about is while there may be in your county benign, benevolent, well-meaning, and sort of innocuous office holders, that might change with a future election 10 years out, 20 years out, and you have someone who's very ambitious, who wants to get not just a Nokian tire to come from Finland and build a $300 million factory in your county, but maybe someone from South Africa or Germany, and a very ambitious person wants changes in the public, wants to modernize the legal structure, and then starts enforcing things against the people.
Well, I have to say too that Ray County is probably about 15 years behind the area where I came from. This is not just all conjecture. I witnessed this happening in the areas that I moved from, and I understand that it's coming. And although these commissioners may be benign, don't doubt yourself. With the typical government mission creep, eventually these regulations are going to get tighter and tighter and tighter.
Well, again, what are the details about this meeting, and what do you recommend for my listener if he cares about liberty and rights?
Well, I would encourage all Ray County residents, indeed all freedom and liberty-loving private property owners, to attend the workshop tonight at 6 o'clock in the Dayton Courthouse Annex. It's right downtown, across from the historic courthouse. Like I said, if we can get enough folks up there to voice opposition to this, it won't even make the regular meeting agenda to have a vote.
Joe Page, thanks very much for chatting with us.
David, thank you. Thank all your listeners.
Joe Page is an entrepreneur, runs a contracting business out of Spring City, and is urging that you, my listener, make note of this opportunity to stand for something right and true, and that would be private life, private living, private doing, without the threat of the barbs, without the threat of words on the page, which, of course, in our understanding of things, these words all have serifs, right? I like the Helvetica font, which is neutral, and where the letter A, for example, doesn't have the little shoes on the bottom of the legs. Those aren't really shoes, they're knives. And when government people use words, they all have knives. Every letter has a series of knives on it, and except perhaps the letter O. But all the other ones have knives attached to them for cutting, right? Because that's what state words do. Government words always cut. They are coercive and compulsory and mandatory. What's not forbidden is compulsory, that kind of thing. And we want, I'd say, less of that and more private option, right? Private, democratic, even democratic options among the people to settle their disputes if they have them. And I'll make note that in Ray County, there is a state court system. The state has a court system. There's Chancery Court, there's Sessions Court, the inferior body serving the county, and then there is circuit. So you can, if you have a real grievance against someone, you can sue. If you have an injury, you can show that you've been injured if you can. I mean, sometimes you just have a grievance that there's no real injury. You just have to live with it and hope for maybe make friends with the neighbor. Rather than threaten him and scowl at him across the hedges. This is David Tulis. We are arguing for local economy and the free market, and arguing for risk. Right? I think risk should be borne by private parties, and what we have is that as we face national financial collapse, is that risk has been offloaded by corporate interests, mostly financial interests, onto the public fisc, the taxpayer. And profit has been absorbed from the public into these private operators, right? These are the cartels that run the national economy, gigantic companies that can always deal with the state. They can always handle compliance issues, as they say, small business can't. And so we are suffering from a dearth of small business creation. Though we have CoLab here in Chattanooga, we are, as a people, as a country, we are desperately oppressive of the spirit of small scale capitalism, which of course always has to start small, and against which the slightest infringement, the slightest duty can discourage a person from just maintaining his status as an employee somewhere, or someone who just scrapes by. And the entrepreneurial spirit in the small scale is very, very vulnerable to discouragement. And small business can't deal with threat that the compliance, tax, licensing, and other threats that the commercial state seems to demand at every turn. So we're hurting badly. And the question of risk I want to mention here to you on the David Tulis Show. This is David Tulis. 800-8949 is the number. 800-8949. Better if there is a risk of death. Okay, better with one of Mayor Andy Burke's officers. Better if someone is to perish in a misunderstanding, right? The officer and the citizen. Better that the officer perish rather than the citizen. And I say that because we have reference to the Javerio Eagle execution in 2015 December. 5 officers were cleared by Neil Pinkston and Sheriff Jim Hammond in February of 2016. Javerio Eagle 24 having a psychotic episode, who called police. Right, he called 911 to his own death at the hand of courageous officers who in the second onslaught of bullets fired about nearly 20 times to make sure he was down. Just as Daniel Shaver was hit 5 times by bullet before he even was on the ground. He had been hit 5 times by Philip Brailsford, who executed him and was found to not have committed a murder. He is not a murderer by a finding of the people who are in that county in Mesa, Arizona. He couldn't take a chance, right? He feared for his life of a man who had been ordered to crawl toward him, an unarmed man in shorts, basketball shorts and T-shirt, businessman in a hotel, and here he shot down. Can't take chances. Well, what about this risk problem? I think if there's a risk, it should be borne by the officer and not by the citizen. The risk should be on the officer. If there is a confrontation, if the officer misjudges the subject, right? And the subject is armed, is dangerous, and plans to use a lethal weapon against the officer, better that the officer perish than that an innocent man who has no weapon, has no intention of injuring anybody, but is simply reaching for his billfold or simply reaching into his window to get his billfold or his driver's license or what have you. Better that the officer perish in a mistake. If a mistake has to be made, better it be against him, that he give his life for the common man, that he give his life in his service to the public, right? In his understood to be service to the public, rather than that a man who is not a killer, has no malevolent impulses, is not about to draw a weapon, has no means of killing anybody, has no hatred in his heart, has no anger, has no raised voice, has no command voice going, or anything like that. Better that the officer perish, that the risk be on him, than that an innocent man perish. Javerio Eagle, perhaps on the edge there, he did have a weapon, and when the officers fired their 18 times or 17 times at him all at once, right? A whole gang of officers firing at this man whose very fragile psyche could not handle the confrontation. Is they were all around him. Everyone was screaming at him. Everyone was screaming at him. He was hearing screams from inside his apartment, and the officers were saying, "Don't." And he could not function properly. The escalation was too much, and he had been shot. And his gun was nearby, and they were coming on him. And were they going to execute him? Well, as far as he knew, was a black man who no doubt had driving while black experiences, just as Hanson Melvin here in Chattanooga and Hickson has had a walking while black experience, right? And as Rochelle Gelpin, now moved to Birmingham, has had a standing while black experience with Officer Jeff Ron, who told a story about her and got her indicted. Though the grand jury rejected his petition for indictment against Rochelle Gelpin. Well, this is David Tulis, and the cop lives in a world of terror, a world of fear, we are to believe, even though cops have a safe calling. They're By one count, their calling is the 34th safest, as I'm remembering. I checked again my data to try to find. Well, I checked online, right? Googled the right question, and found that that being an officer is safer than 13 other professions. The leading riskiest profession is fishing, being a fisherman. Logging is number 2. Aircraft pilots, number 3. Miscellaneous extraction workers are next. Iron and steel. Roofers are number 6. Garbage collectors, they die on the job 4 times more than firefighters and security guards. Transportation accidents are the biggest cause, accounting for 69% of fatalities in that field. Ranchers and farmers have a more dangerous task than police officers. Driver/sales workers and truck drivers are in a calling more dangerous than that of the Chattanooga Police Department officer serving Mayor Andy Burke. Miscellaneous agricultural workers have a greater threat of death to them. Construction workers and taxi drivers and chauffeurs involved in a calling more dangerous, more perilous to health, safety, and welfare than the officer, whether that officer be in Saudi Daisy or in Chattanooga or East Ridge. I had a story yesterday that I want to make mention about Saudi Daisy, and it's something that kind of bothers me. And the story is told by a report by Stephanie Santostazzi of TV9 about the blue bags in the back of the cruiser of Saudi Daisy police officer. There was a $2,000 grant given by that gigantic retailer, and in the bags are foodstuffs and necessities. And so when officers such as Jeremy Wright have been stopping people for transportation offenses, rather than issue that person a citation to make an appearance in city court before the city judge, there is something given. There's not a citation given, but a blue bag of good things. And the story tells us about one traffic stop, a man who's called a driver, James Hale, who runs a stop sign. Officer Wright turns on his lights, as Stephanie reports, and out he goes. How's it going, man? The officer asks, and after asking for the driver license and proof of insurance, which is, of course, the 2 of the 3 legs of commercial government and commercial regulation of the right of travel, which has been compelled to be acts of transportation. Officer Wright walks back to the trunk of his car to grab one of the blue bags. I appreciate your cooperation, he says. Listen, we're doing a pay it forward. If you could use this, great. If you know of anybody else, that's great too. We'd like to give this to you, Wright says. And James Hale gives a sigh of relief. He's processing what's happening. That surprised me, he says. He doesn't need the goods, but he says he knows someone who does. I'm going to pay it forward, he says, and give it to my next door neighbor. It's a young boy and girl. They have a child and are expecting another, so I'll give it to them. So another man stopped by Officer Jeremy Wright in enforcing the transportation statute is surprised, and the photograph on the TV screen is of this man whose name is Ed Lewis, embracing the officer. Reason I stopped you, 51 and 40 man, says Wright, and after not giving him a ticket and handing over the bag, Luke King is the name of the traveler, the motorist, asked if he can get out of the car to give Officer Wright something. It was a hug. So he asked permission of the police officer to get out of the car to give him a hug, because you don't want to approach an officer who's just arrested you. He might take offense to that. He might consider himself in danger. But he does give him an embrace, and Officer Wright feels better about his day, doing good after arresting people. When you are stopped in traffic, you are arrested according to the high court cases that define arrest in Tennessee jurisprudence. You are under arrest. And yet, we are being given bags of groceries from the Walmart. This is David Tulis. I am amazed and I am mystified, and we have more tomorrow right here, The David Tulis Show.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.